So today is Saturday, March 11th, 2017. Today we have a one-day Zazenkai. This morning I'd like to take a look at a koan from the Wumen Kwan or Mumen Kwan, Gateless Barrier. Before doing that, however, I'd like to just say a few words about practice itself and Teisho as well. So when hearing a Teisho, think of it as something being spoken essentially to you alone. It's not a lecture for a crowd. It's being spoken directly to you and your practice, and your response really comes out of your practice. Don't sit there just listening, if that means like listening from the outside. Listen from the inside, which means if your practice is a koan, then please continue to pay attention to your koan and let your koan hear the teisho. But don't stick with the words. Don't mull over the concepts. Think of it as the wind moving through the trees, rattling the branches. You just be there fully with it. If your practice is a breath practice, I'd recommend, first of all, paying particular attention to the exhale, the exhalation. And also, even if your practice is counting breath, I recommend for Cheisho, as when doing any complex thing, instead of counting, pay attention to the exhale and let the breath itself hear the Cheisho. This pertains to breath practice outside the Zendo as well. Walking downstairs, pay attention to the breath and every step. When going outside, pay attention. We have to cross streets. We have to watch for lights, answering phones, whatever our tasks in life might be at the moment. Even if you're counting your breath in the Zendo, I suggest out of the Zendo to really pay attention when you can to the breath itself and not try and focus on the counting. That can really create separations from the tasks at hand when you're outside the Zendo. But it's a way of staying in touch. Even if you're busy, when the phone rings, just be that breath fully and say hello. If you're driving a car, don't count your breath. Don't focus on a koan. Be fully driving that car. But when there are complex tasks, be intelligent about your practice, not forcing anything. Be fully present in all the circumstances of life. And then when you return to the Zendo, then again, take up the count. But koan practice can be carried on through most anything. However, again, things like driving a car or any very complex things, please be intelligent with your practice and be fully with what you're doing, attentively so, even mindfully so. And then take up the koan when you can really focus. But in the background, it's always there, of course. What is this? What is Mo? What is the sound of a single hand? Today's koan is case 46 in the Wumen Kwan Shishuang. Step forward from the top of the pole. The case goes like this. Master Shishuang said, "How do you step forward from the top of a 100-foot pole?" Another eminent master of former times said, "You who sit on the top of a 100-foot pole, although you have entered the way, it is not yet genuine. Take a step from the top of the pole, and the worlds of the 10 directions are your total body." Now, Wu Men's commentary. Stepping forward, turning back, Is there anything to reject as ignoble or unworthy? Be that as it may, how do you proceed onward from the top of 100-foot pole? Sa! Wu Men's verse. He darkened the eye in his forehead and clung to the mark on the scale. Throw away body and discard life, and the blind one leads the blind. So, Shishuang Chu Huan, his Chinese name, Japanese is Sekiso Soen. His dates are 986 to 1039. So here's the challenge. You've worked hard, and now you've reached the top. There is nowhere else to go. You're at the pinnacle. Empty sky is all around you, and only empty sky above. Yet Shishuang and Changsha, who was the eminent master of former times, whose verse is mentioned by Shishuang, say you must now step forward from the top of that pole. And to be clear that they're for real, they ask, how? How will you do it? They take it out of the realm of abstraction and demand, make it real. Do it for real. First, what's the top of the pole? Here is Shibayama Roshi from the Gateless Barrier, Zen Comments on the Mumonkan. Please accept the patriarchal language. This was written a good 50 years ago. The top of the pole, says Shibayama Roshi, 100 feet high, is the summit of the highest mountain, which signifies the purest spirituality in which no thought has started to move. To be at the top means that he has opened his spiritual eye. If he settles down there, however, it turns out to be a cave. He has to go into the defiled world, hiding his brilliance. With his face covered with sweat and his head with dust, he has to work on the busy and crowded street. A Zen man of real attainment and capability is one who has cut off the holy smack of Satori. If you have any Satori at all, cast away every bit of it. This is why humble attitudes and compassionate working are to be developed. To talk about such a Zen life may be easy, but to live up to it in actuality is not easy at all. And that is why Master Mumon, be Wu Men in Chinese, Master Mumon in Japanese, stresses this point in the koan. And a bit more from Shibayama Roshi. To be at the top of a 100-foot pole or to sit on the summit of the highest mountain means that one has fulfilled his upward or ascending the mountain training. As the result of his ardent training, even at the risk of his own life, he has now opened his spiritual eye. If, however, one settles down in this attainment and becomes intoxicated with this pure spirituality, where there is neither satori nor ignorance, life or death, I or you, then he has fallen into a static oneness. It is but a lifeless, empty nothingness, which, like a dead, scorched seed, produces nothing. It can never be the true satori of Zen. The Zen student has to step out of this oneness. He has to live in the midst of people and work under thousands of varied conditions in differentiation. He has to get rid of all the stink of Zen or the smack of satori, and as an ordinary man live the truth of oneness. How can he do this? How can he take this step forward? In order to answer this question experientially, never-ending actual training is needed in Zen. Now let me add, an old teacher was so perfect that when he sat in deep zazen, the birds brought him flowers and fruit to eat. Maybe you remember this story. But when he really got it, the birds no longer brought him gifts. He was no longer special or holy. The world of the 10 directions, just as it is, was his total body. The Buddha, after enlightenment, sat under the bo tree for 3 weeks at the top of the pole. Then he got up, started teaching. walking the dusty roads of India until his death, doing his best to help all interested also awake. Not sitting in isolation, not caught up in our own personal samadhi, but open all the way, then this very world, this very life, just as it is, with its problems and difficulties, is the ground of our realization. And this world of the 10 directions, with its mountains and rivers, its clouds and forests, its pits and ravines, its highs and lows, is ourself, our own real nature. And also has always been so. We don't gain it because this has never not been the true reality. Our practice doesn't produce it. It's just that we haven't truly realized it. To live like this is the 10th Oxfording picture. Genuine means real. It's not yet genuine. Not just in the Zendo, not just in Zazen. This is quite a challenge. But for us beginners, for starts, to get us going, Zen asks us to at least be able to demonstrate this in the Doksan room, to show the point and actualize it to a recognizable degree. That is, a degree recognized by our tradition as passed down from teacher to teacher. We can touch base with it and are confirmed in our practice as a first step toward what may be many lifetimes before we live fully. This is why Aiken Roshi says that completing all the koans is simply a good beginning. Every step, every breath, every count, every koan is always the first step. Beyond the mountain we've just climbed, the pole we've just ascended, is another mountain, another pole. We just couldn't see it till we climbed to the top of this one. Now some words from Aitken Roshi, from Gateless Barrier, the Wumen Kwan, on this koan. Shishuang Sekiso is the name of a Linchi monastery in South China that had a succession of teachers who took its name. This one is probably Shishang Chu Chuan Sekiso Soen, that is, who lived in the 11th century. He began his Zen study very young and had a remarkable career, though he died rather young, at the age of 53. He left many prominent successors, among whom was Yangchi Yogi, whose line of Linchi Zen has survived as modern Rinzai Zen in Japan. The present case is an example of how koans develop. Shishuang revived an old case from Zen literature involving Changsha and his friends. Later, Wumen included it in the Gateless Barrier. Now, almost 800 years after Wumen, almost 900 years after Shishuang, and almost 1100 years, or about 1100 years after Changsha, the case as a koan is still vital. Show me how you step from the top of a 100-foot pole. No history is involved. Yet history and biography are nonetheless instructive. Changsha and the monk Hui trained together under Nanchuan. In due time, these two brother monks became independent. Changsha became abbot of a large training center. Hui went to live in a hermitage in the mountains. How is Brother Hui getting along these days? Changsha wondered. He sent a monk to call on him with instructions about what to say. The monk arrived and asked Hui, "What about when you had not yet met Nanchuan?" Hui sat quietly. The monk asked, "What about after you met Nanchuan?" Hui said, "Nothing special." The monk returned to Changsha and told him what happened. Changsha said, "You who sit on the top of a 100-foot pole, although you have entered the way, it is not yet genuine. Take a step from the top of the pole, and worlds of the 10 directions are your total body." This story is given in full in the Book of Serenity, which is what we work on after Blue Cliff record, or Hekigan Shoyoroku's Book of Serenity. But it seems that Shishuang thought this portion would be enough for the purposes of his students. Hui was in the condition of nothing special. He had entered the way. He had realized equality and emptiness where nothing happens. There are no sages and no ordinary people. There are no animals, trees, deserts, or mountains. There is no eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, mind. Saving others is out of the question. So Changsha said, "It's not yet genuine." Shakyamuni under the Bodhi tree was not yet genuine. He was sitting there enjoying his realization, but meantime, his former disciples were feeling abandoned in the big city. He needed to step out and give them the word. Speaking of the character of Deshan, he felt most at home in emptiness. He only popped out to give his students a swat and then hurried back. But Changsha was a different breed. He had a clear view of the void, of course, but he was a man of the world and made his home there. Once he visited Yangshan, who later went on to help establish the Yang School, but at that time was a young monk. During the evening they were strolling under the full moon, and Yangshan said, "All people have this, but they do not use it." Changsha said, "How true? Won't you please use it?" Yangshan said, "How would you use it?" Changsha seized him by the lapels of his robe, threw him to the ground, and trampled on him. Yangshan got to his feet, dusted himself off, and said, "What a tiger you are." Thereafter, Changshan Chingsen was known as Zen, the great tiger. Yangshan was not equal to Changsha's challenge. He dithered and just said, "How would you use it?" Changsha then showed him how to step forward as this. He makes the point again in one of his teishas. The entire universe is in your eye. The entire universe is your total body. The entire universe is your own luminance. The entire universe is within your own luminance. In the entire universe, there is no one that is not your own self. Here Changsha recast the last line of his message to Brother Hui. The worlds of the 10 directions are your total body, becomes the entire universe is in your eye. This one phrase sums up 39 chapters of Huayan metaphysics. This one phrase, my eye and yours are holograms. Every being is a hologram. Each leaf, each bird, each flower, each child is a chalice containing all. Realizing yourself as such a chalice is your luminance. Now, let me add, this is not just for realized Zen adepts. They don't have to wait to reach some so-called advanced level to benefit from this koan. This has an ordinary application as well. It is a call for us to move forward from present accomplishments and not play it spiritually safe. Reach out, go beyond. So let's say you've gotten good at something and can do this something reasonably well. Should you stay comfortably there? Why not go further? I know this a bit from painting. I can paint clouds pretty decently, but then I do a new painting and realize I know how to do this. That's pretty good. But what's the point of repeating what I can already do? There's no real discovery there. So I load up my brush, slop on more paint, and go where I've never gone, and keep going. I might ruin my already pretty okay painting. But in taking this step, there's a chance I'll come out in a place I've never reached before, and something new and important will emerge. A new level of depth or reality or understanding to the work. Do you see how this might function in your life? This too is stepping from the top of the pole. Dane and Henry Roshi, who was a teacher through Kapla Roshi, they founded the Denver Zen Center, Then he became a student of Aitken Roshi's after he was already a teacher and redid and continued to complete the entire curriculum. Then Danon became my teacher back in 2001 or so, and then was my transmission teacher, authorizing me to teach. Danon Henry Roshi feels that lay practitioners will actually really get this koan more deeply than monastics or semi-monastics. Monastics live lives that are defined by sameness, dressing the same, hair the same, schedule the same. Our lay lives depend on living our uniqueness. Our lives are diverse. Our hair and clothing and life work and schedules differ. How you step off the pole may be different than how I do it. To express this for real in actual life is the point. It's not about staying with some idea of enlightenment, with some thought of I'm on koan number whatever, or it's all one, or I'm a Zen Buddhist, or anything. How to be fully this breath, this day at work, this problem or difficulty, this story, this meal, nothing, meaning no one there separate, no secondary level of reflection left over. This is stepping off. It is always our challenge, and no one can answer it for us but us, little old us, as we are, we ourselves. Doksan is simply a helpful pointer as to how to do it, a checking in to see if we actually can. But while we may be so-called past on a koan, that is not a place to linger. Now we have to be even more fully responsible and actually live it as our life. We cannot put our version of Zen on anyone else. We can't cling to some idea of my realization or my practice. We cannot settle for concepts and mistakenly think we understand. To be unstuck, we must step beyond all knowing, all thinking, all clinging, all identifying, all pontificating. It can't be gained by eschewing or by suppressing thought. Rather, we must courageously see through all the places we want to stay safe, respected, looked up to, and then we must paint a new picture, not continue to repeat old successes. We must take a step off the top of that high pole that we've worked so hard to climb. How? The proof is always in the pudding, not in the description. Telling you won't help you at all. In fact, it would only leave you more stuck to the top of your particular pole. Still, there is a way to be free, free of attachment, free of desire, free. A way to take your step off the pole. It is simple. Get free of yourself. See through the concept of an isolated, separated self. This does not mean replace it with another concept like there is no isolated permanent self. No eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, mind is freedom. It is how you can put the great triple gate on a lantern, as we explored in last week's koan. A lantern is tiny relative to the huge temple gate. A temple gate is large in relation or comparison to a lantern. This is our relative world. Things exist relatively, that is, in relation to one another. But in reality, a lantern is huge compared to an ant or to a speck of dust. And a temple gate is infinitesimally tiny compared to the size of Jupiter or the sun or the galaxy. In the absolute, each thing is fully itself. There is no relative relation. But even this is not complete. We must at the same time function relatively. We must realize both worlds simultaneously and awaken to the reality of not two, not even one. Form is only emptiness. Emptiness only form, as the Prajna Paramita so totally clearly says. Grasping this is simple and is the foundation of all koan work. Simple, yes, because it is true right now, not something we have to gain, but even to glimpse it will take sweat, tears, and perseverance. It is so simple. The intellect, the tool we mistakenly use to grasp and organize the reality of our lives, can't take hold. It is like an eye trying to see an eye. To realize and live it, and then be of use to others through it, not just to have it as a pleasant memory, means serious work, not dabbling. Aiken Roshi warned about how easy it can be for Zen practice to become a hobby, a sideline, a cool identity, or an esoteric add on to an essentially unchanged, self centered life. Dedication, sacrifice, and courage make the journey of stepping beyond habitual self centeredness, whatever unacknowledged form it might take, real, and opens the gate to the ancient archetypal hero or heroine's quest. Don't sell the real quest, real Zen, not simply its outer appearance or forms or yourself, short. There is divine discontent, and its point is not frustration, but happiness. But it means letting go of the top of the pole and taking another step. Accept failure as part of your commitment. Accept falling down, getting back up, and trying again. There is no repetition. There is only perseverance. In this effort, a teacher is a spiritual friend, a friend to our deepest aspiration, our real self. The teacher is not a buddy who'll say, sure, sit up on your pole, enjoy the view. You did great to get all the way up there. How wonderful you are. There's nothing wrong with being a nice person. And there's no point in acting like a Zen teacher, making with shouts and blows. Still, some degree of push goes with the job. A teacher is going to call forth our best efforts and also do his or her own best to make sure that practice, especially koan practice, never becomes an intellectual game. It must be transformative. And this will require at the least a baseline of daily zazen, of teisho, doksan, and successive days of sesshin. The teacher insists that you be scrupulously honest, uphold your vows, and bring your practice to the core of your life where it can radiate out, not just for yourself, but for others as well. Weren't we looking for someone who could help us step off that pole we've been stuck on for who knows how long? Our world is in trouble. Zen can be a way of doing something about it in ordinary ways every day. It is not a quick fix. It is an endless path. It is this breath, this whirl of snow, this actual thought, this angry face, this smiling face. Practicing Zen doesn't mean you shouldn't do other helpful things as well. That will always remain our daily responsibility as conscious human beings. But in working with a teacher, there is always going to be an additional bit of fire under our feet to go deeper. Doksan can be a time of reassurance, but it can also be a challenge. Practice realization has never been easy, but it is deeply rewarding. And with a teacher and a Sangha, you have friends for what often goes friendless in this world. That is your own deepest aspiration. Leonard Cohen has a line. They say it's empty, but that doesn't mean it's light. A little bit more from Aitken Roshi on the verse. Woman's verse begins. He darkened the eye in his forehead. What is meant here? There's a lot of nonsense written about the third eye. I think Woman is simply referring to the eye of understanding, of realization. He is harking back to Brother Hui perched up there in emptiness. 40 years or so ago, a book was published that purported to be the autobiography of a great Tibetan master. It stated that Tibetan children who were considered to be future teachers would have a circle of bone removed from their foreheads to make their third eye more sensitive. When we told our teacher Senzaki Sensei about this, he shouted, "Fake! Fake!" We were amazed. How could it be so sure? It turned out the book was in fact written by someone in England who had never been to Tibet. Even after this exposure, though, some people continue to believe the story, saying that the author is remembering something from his previous life. Nonsense. The third eye is a metaphor, and a profoundly instructive one, but roses in her cheeks doesn't mean the American beauty is sprouting there. And clung to the mark on the scale. He was mistaking the measure for the weight. It is true that empty equality is the touchstone of realization. Unless you see it clearly, you cannot deepen your practice. But once you do see it, don't neglect what comes next. Throw away body and discard life. Give up once and for all and shed that nothing special. And the blind one leads the blind. Woman did not know about the English proverb. He was referring to something else. Sort out the meanings here. Closing words today are from Harriet Tubman. March 10th, yesterday, was Harriet Tubman Day, which I did not know when I chose this quote for this Show. If you hear the dogs, keep going. If you see the torches in the woods, keep going. If they're shouting after you, keep going. Don't ever stop. Keep going. If you want a taste of freedom, keep going.